Good morning and welcome to another bonus podcast. My name is Kristal. I'm the pastor of women here at Northview Community Church. I am joined by Thaleia this morning.
Hello, everyone.
Thaleia is the pastor of care here at our church. And we are podcast buddies and ministry buddies in lots of different ways.
And did you know that Kristal and I share a last name? Her current name is Kristal Taves.
I know.
That was my maiden name for 22 years.
So we might be related way back.
I know.
That is the tragedy, or not tragedy, but the hidden thing that happens in Mennonite circles sometimes.
I know.
Yeah. My son was freaked out the first time my aunt came to one of our family gatherings because she tried to insinuate that, or suggested that him and his then girlfriend might be related. And he's like, oh no, that can't be it. And it actually wasn't. It was like through whatever, all kinds of in-laws. But anyways, we are here in our podcast room talking about some questions that have come up. We want to talk about mentoring. It's one of the questions that we get asked like weekly, daily, almost.
Almost.
Yeah. How can I get somebody older to speak into my life? Why doesn't the church organize this for us? And so we want to talk about that, what our view is for that, and how we kind of have a vision for it.
Yep.
We also want to talk about the Church 2 conference, which is coming up at the end of May at CBC. Not specifically about that so much, but just making people aware of it, but also just talking about some of the issues kind of surrounding that whole Me Too, Church 2 movement.
Yep.
Because that's an important thing for us to be aware of.
It is.
And then the third thing we want to talk about just coming out of that is some of the, how that affects us in ministry. How does that affect us as women working at Northview, or just women in general in ministry roles.
And how we protect our marriages as well.
Yeah, some of the boundaries that we put in place. You're going to be talking about that in our pre-marriage class tonight.
Yes.
And so you have it on your radar.
It is top of mind today.
Yeah, that's right. And it's something that we are constantly surprised that people kind of push back about. So we want to talk about that a little bit. And then just talk about generally opportunities for women in ministry at Northview, because there are lots of new people coming to our campuses all the time wondering how they can get involved.
Yeah.
And there's some misperceptions out there, and we want to just kind of talk through how women specifically can get involved at Northview. So that is our agenda. 4 questions, half an hour.
Yeah.
See how we do. To start off with, first, I just want to mention that we have our conference, Breaking Free from Fear, that is starting this Friday night and Saturday. And if you have not yet signed up, but you want to come, feel free to just show up at the door and pay your $35 and be part of it. It's
How many
be a good
women
weekend.
are signed up so far?
Around 400.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to be a full worship center.
So we're going to have worship, and we're going to have teaching times, a prayer.
Yep.
Gonna be
And some
great.
lunch.
Yeah.
So, 400 is a good number for in the worship center. It won't feel too small in there. It'll be great, nice and cozy, but yet room to move around. So if you come, enter through the front doors, come in the worship center. That's where we'll be meeting. If you have to come through the back, hopefully you can find your way around to the front.
Yeah.
We'll have people at the doors.
True.
But Northview is a circle, so just walk in a circle and you'll eventually find us.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's very normal to have people wandering around saying, where do I find?
Yeah. But we'll be there. We'll help you figure it out.
Yes.
So let's get started. Mentoring. Thalia, you probably have this question asked to you the most. What do you want to say as we start off talking about this topic?
So you and I, Kristal, we want to affirm mentoring.
Yeah.
We absolutely believe in it. We love it. It's very important. Except that you and I have the same mindset in that we don't affirm it in the traditional way, the official, formal way of matching a woman, let's say, with a mentor that they don't previously have known.
Right.
They haven't known.
Yeah.
So we would actually prefer women to be connected with women who are older, women who are younger, women of their own age, and learn from a variety of people, men and women, couples, singles, all different stages of life, as your mentor.
Yeah. So why is that?
Well, what's really interesting is that if you ask someone to be a mentor, they will run.
Yes.
No one feels able to be a mentor. They don't feel like they have enough to give. They don't feel smart enough. They don't feel wise enough. They feel very scared of that title of being a mentor. I mean, I do.
I know. I was going to say, and I'm the pastor here.
Exactly.
And someone asked me, like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
None of us feel sort of able enough to do that job. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
The second reason they run is that everyone is busy. And so the idea of putting a formal mentorship title into your life, what does that mean? 1 hour every 2 weeks, 1 hour every month, just feels overwhelming.
So we'd encourage you to talk to somebody that you want to get to know and say, do you want to go on a walk with me on Thursday afternoon? And not make it necessarily something completely formal.
Yeah, one of our past staff members, she had sort of a secret agenda about this, and it was so funny. She had in her mind that she wanted to learn certain baking things or certain gardening things or certain financial things in her new marriage. And so what she did is she didn't tell the women that she wanted them to be her mentor. She simply said, could I please learn this recipe from you? Or could I please talk to you about how to handle finances in our new marriage? And so she asked them questions about life, and they had like a half-hour conversation, or they went for a walk or a coffee, and it was clearly a mentoring opportunity for our young staff member, but it wasn't an official mentoring.
No. And she just kind of kept her eyes open and ears open to conversations that she heard, people that she saw either at ministry or just at church, and thought, wow, they actually seem to have something that I could glean from or learn from. And so for her, it was just taking the initiative to kind of keep her eyes open for people that she thought could speak into her life, but she didn't make it just this big pressure situation for that person.
Yeah, because one person can't be a mentor in terms of teaching someone else everything. You have to have a wide variety of people in your life that can teach you a wide variety of things.
Yeah, because we sit in our staff room and we talk to people who are of all ages. If you've been at our staff, you'll see that there's interns who are like 20, and then we have people up to our age and older. And so I think at our dinner tables, at our lunch tables, we learn lots of stuff from different people. It's good for us to learn from people who are the younger generation about different things.
And it's really good to learn in community. Kristal and I can't say that enough, because if you come to any of our women's ministry Bible studies, you'll sit in small groups. So you might sit around a table of 8 women, or you might sit in a classroom of up to 20 women, and you'll get to know people that you sort of naturally click with, and those you naturally want to learn from. And there are some that you don't naturally click with or want to learn from, and that's fine. You can still glean from them as we pray together, as we study together. It's much better in community as opposed to being attached to one person that you have to learn everything from in that particular formal hour.
Yeah. And even sometimes those people that we don't click with or that we don't necessarily want to learn from, we're learning from because we're saying, actually, I don't really want to follow in that person's footsteps. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to be with people of all kind of shapes and sizes in that way, in terms of their maturity, in terms of their biblical knowledge. We can learn from positive and negative examples, even in our own lives.
Let me talk a little bit about couple mentoring. So quite often, I will have women come to talk to me about their adult children who are dating seriously or engaged or getting married or maybe newly married, and they desperately want their adult children to have a couple mentor. So this young couple matched with an older, wiser couple. Great idea in theory. What sometimes happens is these young adult couples, they don't necessarily know the older couples, or maybe they're not really professing faith right now, or they're kind of, have left the church a little bit, and they don't really want anything to do with this older couple that they know nothing about, and they don't want to sit with them formally. And
they assume they're going to be stuffy and boring or just, not have anything to say to them specifically. Yeah.
So what I tell these moms is I said, you know what? Talk to your close friends, your siblings who are married or single or widowed, and have them be mentors without that title. When you have family gatherings, talk about life. Pray for this young couple, when you're at home, sort of privately. Surround them with love and care and support, and kind of be their natural mentors without that title. And when I told this to one mom, she was so encouraged because she was so discouraged that her adult son and his fiance didn't want anything to do with a couple mentoring program, didn't want to come to church, didn't want to go to a pre-marriage class. But when I talked about the possibility of linking with the natural couples and families that are in their life, she was so encouraged that this could be good for this young couple.
Yeah, she realized there were natural, intentional relationships already there that could be helpful.
And for that reason, she started planning more frequent family gatherings to invite over her siblings and their spouses and grandparents and all kinds of people, so that there would be natural places where this young couple that's not plugged into church would have a Christian influence.
Wow. And to see life worked out with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges that we find for mentoring too is that people feel like if they're a mentor, they have to have it all together.
Oh, yeah.
We have even people that are our table leaders, like at our Wednesday morning and Monday night study, they'll come and they'll talk to me about something that they're working through that's really hard in their life or their marriage or just whatever, their own emotional health, those kind of things. And they'll say, does this disqualify me from being a leader? Does this disqualify me from kind of in that role? And I say, well, no, because I'm going through a similar thing, or this is how we're working through things, or all of us are in process. And so I think there's sometimes this perception that we have to have it all together. And I think this actually really hurts Christian community rather than building it. Because if we give out this perception that we have it all together, then people feel like they don't have, that they're having issue, or that if they have issues in their life, that they're somehow less than or just not as qualified to be part of things. And I think the more we can break down those barriers.
Yeah, I have one story about that. I have, also I've changed all the details and names, but I have had a couple in their 60s come to meet with me, and they had been mentors in the past, years past, when we did have an official program. And now they were going through a tough time, but they hadn't confided in anyone. They hadn't talked to any one of their close friends here at church. They hadn't come to talk to any of the pastors. They'd been struggling through this for a year, significantly on their own. And when I asked, well, why didn't you talk to your trusted friends that you love and care about, that you've been in community groups with and you've been mentoring alongside years past? They said, oh, no, we couldn't talk to anyone because we are past mentors.
Yeah.
I said, oh, no, mentors have problems too. We all do. At every stage of life, there are problems. You need to open up to one or two couples that you trust, one or two of your close friends. Pray with them, share with them. I know they have stuff going on. And she was so encouraged that this is normal to have muck, as I call it, at church at every stage of life. And we need to have a few people we share in depth with, even if we have the title of pastor or worship leader or kids ministry coach or youth leader. We have to be able to share with people.
Yeah, because that is life.
It is.
It is not, we don't want to have this set up mentality that there's kind of two tiers of Christians.
No.
And that there's the leaders who don't have any issues and the rest of us.
Yeah, there's no immunity when you have a title of some sort. You still have problems because you're a person.
Yeah. And our goal as Christians is to walk through those in a way that honor God, but we can't just disappear them all.
No.
Because there's going to be circumstances that come into our life, and there's our own sin that we need to deal with, and we're all in process. God's working through all of us.
Yeah.
So, and for me, I personally find it encouraging to see somebody that I have looked up to and realize that they're still dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is like, oh, phew, then I don't have to have it all together.
True.
Because that person has been married 40 years and they still have issues that they're trying to sort out. It just makes us feel like more able to cope.
I know.
Because we realize, oh, it's not only us.
No, it's normal.
Yeah. So don't feel like you have to hide all these things.
No.
Let's be real.
Right.
As a
But you
Christian
don't have to
community.
be real on social media, and you don't have to be real with everyone in your life. Just a few trusted people.
And you don't have to be real about all the details
No.
necessarily. I think even just someone saying, my husband and I struggled and we're working through an issue, even just those little pieces are helpful for other people to hear.
Yeah, it's a
you don't have to
general
say
overview.
all the guck about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to know that when you walk into any church, including Northview, not everybody is trustworthy. And so you really need to spend time getting to know people before you reveal the nitty-gritty of what you're going through. Like, really go to your trusted people. And, pastors and counselors, we have a confidentiality, so you can come talk to us. Maybe you have a trusted aunt or parent or somebody in your life, but you don't have to share with everyone.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if someone said to you, you find me a mentor in 2 sentences, what would you say to them?
I'd say join a community, get to know a lot of people, and learn from a lot of people.
Yeah. And don't make it a big formal deal.
No.
Yeah. Let's just try to learn from, and think about specific things you want to learn maybe.
Yeah.
And then try and see if there's somebody that might have something to say into that specific area.
Yeah.
Whether it's infertility or whether it's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Second topic we wanted to talk about is that #MeToo movement, #ChurchToo. What can you tell us about the conference that's happening at CBC? Do you know anything about it?
Yeah. End of May is a Friday night and Saturday, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's taking on this concept that we have heard, for now, 6 months since the fall, about the #MeToo, about all of the women that have been hurt by men, and also men who've been hurt by women in a sexual way, been touched, and they've been treated badly. And we know all about that through social media. One little side piece on that is it's really hard for me to read all the #MeToo articles in the news, because we don't know if someone has actually done the things they've been accused of. And it's very hard to see it tried in the media. I feel just my heart aches for the person who has possibly committed such terrible things. But the thing is, we don't know for sure. It shouldn't be tried in the media. And the other thing is that we are all sinners. We are all fully capable of doing terrible things. And so we have to be very careful about our attitudes and what we say, that we not so quick to condemn when we don't actually know the facts.
Yeah. So we're not saying that we want to be soft on the issue
No.
of sexual immorality or sexual harassment.
No.
That's not at all what we're saying.
No, it's
But we're
absolutely
saying-
wrong. Sexual harassment, sexual molesting, touching inappropriately, absolutely wrong. It's not okay. It should not happen. We want that to be definitely dealt with in the proper way through the police and through the courts and through all those things. But on the other hand, if somebody has been accused wrongly, that's also wrong.
Yeah. So we don't want to give into this hysteria around it.
No.
We want to kind of honor the court system
Yeah.
and not spread gossip about things
No.
that we've just heard.
Yeah.
And because right now the momentum is on the side of the accuser. People
Yes.
can just raise their hand and say something, and people take it
Yeah.
unquestionably, where that could be a completely false accusation, and it
I
could
know.
ruin somebody's life.
Ruin their reputation, ruin their marriage, ruin their kids, ruin their church, it's just, we need to be very careful that we don't necessarily believe everything that we're told.
No, because we have had, even at Northview, people that come in here who are not very stable in terms
Yeah.
of their thinking, and they say all kinds of things,
Yeah.
and we don't know whether they're telling the truth or not.
Right.
Right. And so there is a due process that we want to go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this conference is being held at CBC,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of talking about how the church is dealing with this issue, has dealt with this issue,
Yeah.
should deal with this issue in the future. Like we said, we want to be totally honest and upfront and not be churches that cover up anything.
No.
And we also want to prepare people for it as they enter ministry. So why don't you say a little bit about the Sacred Trust class and what you do there, Thalia?
Yeah. So the Sacred Trust is a class that is offered by the Conference of Mennonite Brethren Churches. It's offered a couple times a year. I teach part of that class. It's a full day class, and I teach like an hour and a half to 2 hours of it. My portion is healthy boundaries in ministry, particularly around protecting against sexual immorality.
Yeah.
Because we are sinners and we are fully capable of sinning ourselves. So we need to put boundaries in place so we don't sin. But we also need to realize that other people may sin against us, and we need to protect ourselves and our marriages and our churches. And so I talk with pastors around this.
So just before we go on much more, it's a mandatory course
Yes.
for everybody who's being credentialed
Yes.
as to be like an official minister under the MB conference.
Yeah.
So for anyone who wants to perform marriages or do any of those kind of official things within the MB conference, we have to get accredited basically by our conference so that we're registered with the government.
Yes.
And so those accreditation things happen 3 or 4 times a year.
Yep.
And then Thaleia is part of that accreditation process every time they have this course.
Yes.
So it's mostly pastors.
Mostly pastors,
some
there's
elders,
ministry
some-
leaders.
yeah.
There might be a director of children's ministry, director of worship, everyone who wants to be officially recognized by the Mennonite Brethren Conference as a pastor or as a ministry leader needs to take this course.
Yeah.
And so then we go very firmly through what are the healthy boundaries for ministry to protect ourselves from sexual immorality ourselves and to protect our churches.
Yeah. So what would be some of the main topics that you'd cover there? Like what would an hour and a half, 2 hour session look like for you?
So we talk about the need for boundaries, like why is this important? Because often as Christians, we have this belief that we shouldn't have boundaries in ministry because we should be ready to give of ourselves 24/7 all year long. That there should be no off button for pastors or ministry leaders. And we know that creates all kinds of problems because our bodies are limited. We actually do need to take time to rest. So I talk about physical boundaries. And then there's also the problem that if we as pastors respond to every crisis call, then we start to think of ourselves as the savior to everyone, which is not good because we're a team. And actually we as pastors can't save everyone. And then the problem is that if we run out at all hours of the night, it hurts our family. And it can also open us up to getting involved with people on an emotional level or a physical level that can lead to things like affairs.
Yeah.
And we talk about how when you are a pastor or a ministry leader, a physical affair is not simply a physical affair. It's actually a case of abuse.
Yeah.
Because
That
a
power
pastor is seen,
indifference,
is seen as a person in a position of power and authority. And if they have an affair with someone in a lesser position of power and authority, it's abuse and it can be prosecuted as such. So it's very, very important that we teach these ministry leaders how to protect themselves against all kinds of things. Like a youth leader, they shouldn't be driving home a student by themselves because they are opening themselves up to the possibility of being accused of something that they may not have done.
Yeah. So this could be same gender or opposite gender.
Yeah, same gender or opposite gender. Used to be that it was sort of okay to take the same gender home, except that now we have those kinds of difficulties coming up where we are just in a society where people are afraid. And if their child says, this youth leader touched me or talked to me this way or did something to me, the youth leader could be wrecked for life.
Yeah.
And so we need to really consider those things. It's the same for a pastor with an intern, a pastor with a receptionist. We have to be very careful how we conduct ourselves because of the allegations open to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you talk about kind of physical boundaries in terms of our time and our energy, and then also just the boundaries of touch, those kind of things. Like how do we actually, because I think sometimes as pastors, we think we need to meet the emotional needs of our congregation. We want to kind of be affectionate.
Yeah.
And so how do we do that well? How do we touch someone in the hallway in a way that's not going to be misconstrued?
Yeah. We talk about touch. We talk about prayer. We talk about traveling and meetings together. What are the boundaries around that? We talk about social media, texting, emails, phone calls. We talk about like every possible realm that we can talk about thinking about boundaries for your life.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about.
Yeah. And I remember a couple of years ago when you started doing this, you got a lot of pushback because people felt like, well, as Christians, we shouldn't have boundaries, like you said, or as Christians, we want to be caring and loving and we want to be this. I think that's kind of changed a little bit over time, hasn't it? Or do you still
there's a little bit less pushback. At first, it was this sort of, oh, you're just bringing in a culture of fear. Like we really should spread the gospel at any cost. So if you need to meet alone with a person of the opposite gender in a coffee shop to share the gospel, you should do that. If you should drive someone home of the opposite gender because you need to help them out and therefore spread the gospel, you should do that. And I'm saying, no, actually. There are times and places to get other people involved in those kinds of situations. You can have meetings in open offices. You can have meetings in offices that have glass walls to protect yourself. Like you can bring a third person along. There's all these different ways to protect ourselves from false allegations, as well as just to protect ourselves against our own sinful temptations.
Yeah.
Because we are all so fully capable of that. So we should talk a little bit about what we do personally and what our office does to protect in this realm.
Yeah. So as you transition to that idea of kind of boundaries in ministry for ourselves, I think it's important that we can't just kind of isolate ourselves on an island and say, well, I'm never going to engage in relationships at all in order to protect myself, because we have to. We have all these colleagues that we're working with.
Totally.
And we have to email people.
Yes.
Like Jeff and Steve and Greg and other people and text them with information and have meetings with them. And so some of the things that we've done, often when I'm emailing something that I'm maybe a little bit more emotional about, or that kind of isn't just like an information piece, to one of our male pastors, I'll CC Thaleia in it, just so that they know it's not like me trying to reach out for some weird kind of, emotional involvement with them. Just to have that third party kind of involved in the conversation. That's one of the things that we do.
And the listeners should know that Jeff, our lead pastor, all of his emails are read by his executive office assistant, Cecilia.
Yeah.
So that he does not get any private emails that are simply to Jeff alone.
No. Which sometimes surprises people because they think they're having this private conversation with him.
Yeah.
And he's clear to say that right away, is that, no, this is something that comes through his executive assistant. So that's a protection.
It is a protection.
For him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And upstairs in our open office, if you haven't seen it, it is literally an open office.
Yeah.
We are all sitting at long tables together, and you can see everybody's computer and you can see what they're doing with their time. And all of the meeting rooms have glass walls. And so you can see who's meeting and what they're doing in there. This is a protection.
Yeah.
And we also are not allowed to drive alone with someone of the opposite gender. So I work a lot with Vic and Paul, and I don't drive alone with them. I don't have coffees outside of the office in a coffee shop with them. We meet in the church with glass walls. We're not allowed to travel alone. Like Kristal and I can go to a conference together, but I can't go alone to a conference because of, again, the allegations. I can go with my husband, or I could go with a few colleagues, but I can't go on my own.
Yeah, because then there's no one to say, well, Thaleia didn't do this. Like if there's some accusation was ever put against you, there's no one to verify that actually, no, you were not involved in that kind of thing.
Yeah. And personally, for me, I also don't meet for coffee with people of the opposite gender alone or drive alone with them. And my husband, Mark, and our kids have the passwords to all my phones and devices of any sort. And I will frequently ask them to go in there and get something for me. Like Ava yesterday took a video of something. I asked her to get my phone and do it so that they know what's going on. It's accountability for me. I'm not hiding anything on my phone or in my texts or emails. You can look at all of them. And they're all just factual based if it's with someone of the opposite gender. I don't have like a secret friendship going on that can lead to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think everybody's life and kind of like everybody's circumstances are maybe going to be a little bit different. But I think it's important to think about these things ahead of time think, how am I going to deal with this kind of a situation when it comes up, or ask advice when it does come up.
Let me add one more thing, is that of course there are emergencies. So a few years ago, we had two brothers living beside us, and it was Christmas time, and one of the brothers fell off a ladder and broke his ankle. Well, I was only home. Mark wasn't home. He normally works at home. So I jumped immediately in the car with this neighbor, and I took him to the hospital. And I waited with him it was a couple of hours before his girlfriend could get there. Like there are emergencies.
Yeah.
You know, if Paul was sick and there was no one around to take him home, I'd take him home. But we would phone Carla and say, I'm taking Paul home, just so you know.
Yeah.
So that there's no weirdness that can be accused to any of us. It's from Ephesians 5, where it talks about, starting Ephesians 5, verse 3, but among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality or of any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. And if you keep reading, it talks about how we are so prone to sin, and because of that, the wrath of God is coming. And we don't want that. We want to honor God with our lives, with our words, with our actions, with everything in us.
Yeah.
I don't think we want there to be a hint.
No, and we don't want to be, if we live in fear of kind of the things in our closet being exposed too, that's a crazy way to live, right?
That's stressful.
I know.
I wouldn't want that.
Rather, let's keep that closet clean.
Yeah. So a lot of prevention is what we do.
Yeah.
And thinking ahead, keeping our radar on for the situations that could arise.
Yeah. And I think brainstorm with your team. Like if you are part of a ministry team, and say you're part of a youth team, and so think about it as a team. What would we do if one girl was left here at the end of the night and her mom didn't come to pick her up? Like, how are we going to work through those kind of situations so that you have a bit of a contingency, so that not all the youth leaders don't kind of rush off and leave the pastor there by himself to deal with the situation.
True.
Right? Like think through how many people need to stay on staff until everybody's gone, or those kind of pieces.
Yeah. And think through your own personal situation in terms of, it's slightly different if you're single and you're working with other people who are clearly single. But as soon as you're seriously dating or engaged, I think you need to think along the lines of heading towards, if this relationship is going to be serious, how are you going to protect that relationship?
Yeah.
So it changes depending on your stage of life. If you're newly separated, divorced, widowed, again, you have to rethink as a single person. What is this like? How do you protect yourself? How do you protect the marriages around you?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'd encourage you, if you want to talk through this, Thaleia's door is open. I'll throw her under the bus.
Absolutely, because this is a regular topic for me. And I know that listening to this, you might have all kinds of questions and you might be a little riled up because of what I've said. That's okay. Come and talk to me. I'm so willing to engage in pushback. I've done this Sacred Trust course for, I think almost 6 years since I've been on staff. I do it several times a year. And it's mostly male pastors that are in the room. There are usually a few females, not that many. And so I'm used to getting a lot of pushback from the men. And that's okay. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah. Which helps me transition into our next topic about being a woman in ministry. That is a funny thing, that most things we go to, it is mostly men in the room. Yeah. So I kind of laugh because we have times where, because we have our women's ministry stuff going on here on a Wednesday morning, Monday night, whatever. And once in a while, one of our male pastors will have to come in and to find their wife in the room. And they're totally horrified to be in this room of 130 women or whatever.
Scared, cautious, tentative.
I don't want to be in here. And then I want to say to them, and I have said to some of them, this is how Thaleia and I feel every single time. Because we go to these MB conferences or whatever, and it's
50 men, 3 women. Now, the plus side is there's never lineups for the bathrooms.
No. I know.
Elder meetings, there's usually 2, 3 women and tons of men. This is just normal for our life.
Yeah.
It was quite awkward and hard at first for me. Now it's still a little awkward sometimes, not so hard anymore.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more comfortable with it.
So if you're a man listening to this, I just encourage you to kind of recognize that, this is a thing. Because when we talked I remember we talked to Jason Wall about it at the MB this last conference. And he was like, I had never thought of that before, that it must feel weird for you guys that you're in this room of 300 people and there's 15 women.
I know. So I was at a birthday party this past weekend with quite a few Northview people. And we were separated. You know how it always goes. The women were in the kitchen and we're all chatting and the guys were downstairs. So one of the husbands came upstairs and he was chatting with the women. And all of a sudden he went, I'm the only man here. This is just so awkward. And I started laughing. I said, well, if I come downstairs and hang out with the men, it'll be like an elder meeting. And he started laughing because it's normal for me. I'm like, why are you like all like upset? Like, this is so normal for me. You just kind of have to walk in and own it and talk to people. They're just people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we kind of challenge or kind of encounter here on a regular basis.
Yeah.
One thing that makes me feel a little awkward sometimes is that we are asked to do things just because we're women.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like, I'm not really qualified to do this. And that's kind of a weird thing to be asked to like be part of committees or commissions, not necessarily within our church, but I'm saying like larger MB ones, just because of my gender. It feels like, isn't there a more qualified person? But there is kind of a bit of this pressure that we feel, I guess, to represent kind of the female perspective.
I know, it's very weird. I had one weird story happen a couple of years ago. So I was at a conference meeting and it was, I'm sure there was 50 plus men in the room and there were 3 women. That's normal? Okay. Then they asked during prayer time that we should all stand in a circle and hold hands. Well, I don't really want to stand in a circle and hold hands with the men around me, but okay, I had to. That's awkward enough.
Yeah.
This is not my husband. He's not in the room. And these are all men I don't really know. And then the leader of the prayer time says, so we should really hear from the sisters should pray. And I'm thinking, no way, I am not praying. And so he said it again. We really should have the sisters open in prayer. And I know this leader of the prayer time.
And he's
I've worked
trying
with him
to be honoring to the women and say we wouldn't want to hear from the women. But
that's a bit terrifying. Yeah. I don't really want to be put on the spot as one of 3 women. And I know he's sort of targeting me because he works with me a lot. And I'm like, gulp, like, okay. But I wouldn't normally choose to pray out loud in a group that size. That's actually not my comfort level. So I would have just preferred to be quiet. But because the sisters, he said it 3 times, the sisters were asked to pray. So I did open in prayer. And that's the kind of thing that we face a little bit now and then.
Yeah. So we have lots of opportunities for women in ministry here at church. And we're going to go through some of the things. But I think one of the things that we need to recognize kind of as women in a field that is a lot of men is that we have to be willing to kind of engage with men and not kind of resort to some female tactics of getting around things. So I think women in general can be a little bit more nervous about confrontation. They can be more emotional about situations that they're going through. I am stereotyping here, but as we walk alongside women leaders, I think one of the things that women leaders find hard is that they kind of have to get a little bit of a tougher skin. They have to be ready a little bit to kind of stand up for their ideas and their beliefs in a way that might be a little bit more confrontational than they're used to. And this is something that I've had to learn in my own marriage because Bob's family and his kind of way of being is just more confrontational than my family was. So I feel like I came in a bit more prepared for that. But it's something I think in general, when we're working with a lot of guys, we have to be ready to kind of put up what we're saying as kind of something we want to do, have some facts behind it, have some rationale and stand up for it and kind of argue for things because that is what we're going to have to do.
Push and pull in a respectful way.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that we've tried to do well, tried to model well, but we're also encouraging other women in our congregation that be a team player.
Yes.
Bring your full self into that conversation, but be ready to have some pushback, be ready to kind of argue for what you stand for and have some good reasons and work towards that. Because if we expect, sometimes people think, well, you know, the more strong person always has to bow to the kind of more fragile person or whatever. And that's not, I can see like, some of the men might need to be a little bit more soft over time, but it's also up to us to also enter the conversation at a level that is expected kind of in that zone. We can't always expect people to kind of come to where we are at.
No.
So I'd encourage women who are leading here to, be good team members and also just work at kind of having a bit of a backbone there and working through situations that might be hard.
So Kristal, we have a lot of women that come that are new to Northview, all of our campuses, and they're wondering, as women, where are the areas they can plug in when they have leadership gifts? And I don't just mean teaching, but it might be worship and kids ministry and all kinds of things. So tell us a little bit of where women lead at Northview.
Yeah. So the only thing that women don't do is preach on Sunday and be part of our elder board. But everything else is totally open for women in terms of pastoral staff levels, in terms of our internship program, in terms of our Immerse program, which is our training for pastoral interns, in terms of teaching kids ministry, in terms of leading in worship, just so many things. And so I think once in a while, because this is talked about at our membership classes, that we have the complementarian model where we have male elders. and our male kind of preaching pastors, people think, oh, Northview is against women and against women in ministry. And we ask if we are oppressed here at Northview and how we can stand working here.
Yeah.
We get that conversation. Actually,
quite often.
People ask us that.
Now we kind of laugh a little bit. We know where they're coming from and we need to address it, but it's totally not true.
And it is a theological thing that we can work through and talk through. We're not opposed to talking through the question in terms of a theological perspective, but we want to affirm people that even if you don't agree theologically with it, even if you think that women should be allowed to do everything, if you get involved here for several years, there's a lot that you can learn. We have so much leadership training for women. We have like the Simeon Trust courses that we offer. We have the Women in the Word conference, which teaches us how to be better teachers and
these are
communicators.
seminary level courses.
They are.
Yeah.
That we're offering to women. We're doing one this next couple of weeks on how to teach Old Testament narrative, they're solid classes. And so even if you don't necessarily feel like Northview is the place for you 20 years down the road because you see yourself working yourself into a lead pastor role or a preaching role, there's so much that you can learn here along the way. Like I said, our internship classes, we have 2 pastoral interns right now who are women and always open to more.
And our elders, quite a few of them run committees. So we have like the development committee and the personnel committee and the stewardship committee and discernment committee and all these committees. Yes, they are led by an elder, but there are women and men on these committees that give input to the elder.
Working side by side.
We go to the elder meetings and we can give input if we want to. Our voices are heard. They are our friends. We really enjoy them and their wives. So it's not like we are excluded. Kristal and I have opportunity, like all the other pastors, to sit with our senior leadership team, which is our lead pastor, Jeff, campus pastor, Ezra, and our executive pastor, Steve. And we meet with them and we are able to present all of our difficult issues and our joys to them so we can work out those things.
And we're very affirmed by them in our roles and our leadership.
And because we're in an open office, our voices are heard all the time. Greg and Jeff and Kyle, they sit right by us, and Paul and Vic. And so we toss in our opinions and they toss in theirs and we go back and forth on issues. We are not sidelined in any way.
No. And there's no kind of hierarchy within the pastoral staff that the male pastors have a higher authority or higher voice in our decision making.
No.
It's decisions made by pastors and
and
elders. So we would just encourage you that if you are a woman trying to explore where you could fit in ministry, that there's just so many opportunities for you to be part of things here. So what we will generally tell people is, why don't you come and be part of something for a while?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important, even for all of our ministries, we encourage people to be part of the church for at least 6 months before they volunteer.
Yeah.
Because you want to see, okay, what the church is about, what our priorities are, all those kind of pieces, and then see if you're a good fit for that.
Yeah.
And then we also, especially for some of our teaching ministries, we have prerequisite classes that we make people take. And so before you're going to be teaching in certain settings, there's 2 classes specifically that I make women leaders to take. And that's just to make sure that their biblical knowledge is solid and that they kind of understand some of our principles for how we go about providing teaching material and those kind of things, because that's important before they're going to be in a formal leadership role.
Yeah. And what I would encourage too is that if you're considering Northview to be your church home, you could take the membership classes, even if you don't choose to become a member at this point, because it would give you a really good inside look at why we worship the way we do, why we give of our money the way we do, how we structure our leadership structure, like the elders and pastors, how that all works. We talk about such a variety of issues that you would get a good insight into the inner workings of Northview so you can decide if this is a good church fit for you or not.
Yeah. And those membership classes, like the pastors are there. And so you can ask those questions, anything that's been on your head. If you've been sitting in the pews for the last 6 months and wondering about how Northview does things, just go ahead. Jeff will be there the first one, and then other people's.
They're next. In May. You can look on the website, or you can just email Kristal and I throughout 3 weeks, and you can email us and ask information about that. And there are quite a few people who simply audit the classes. Like they don't become members after, like they are maybe members already and they want to learn the inside information, or maybe they're just curious and they're thinking about it. So feel free.
Yeah. Sometimes people have been members for 20 years, but the church has really changed. And so they just want to hear again, the vision of the church, what we're going for, just to see, so they can get a better picture for what the church is all about.
Yep.
So I think that's it.
I think that's it.
That's where we're going to end. Mentoring, Church 2, Me Too, Boundaries of Ministry, and Women in Ministry. So hopefully some of that was helpful for you. Why don't I just close in prayer?
Yeah.
Lord, I thank you so much for our church. I thank you just for the energy that is in our staff, the enjoyment that we have together, the way that we just push and pull ideas together, and the way you guide us by your Spirit as we listen to each other's perceptions and as we study your word together. We just thank you that you're leading and guiding us. Thank you, Lord, that you are in the process of sanctifying all of us, that the work that you started in us, that you will carry it forward to completion, as we read in Philippians 1. And so, Lord, we thank you that all of us are in that process of becoming more and more like you. So as we look for people to mentor us along that process, as we look to people to partner with us in ministry as we go, Lord, we just pray that you would just guide us to people who can help us in that journey, and that we would be able to look outside ourselves as well to how we can encourage others and bring others along behind us. So, Lord, I thank you for the ministries that are going on, especially the men's Bible study, Lord, how it started this year, and just relationships and mentoring has developed just so quickly through that already. We just pray that that would continue and that would flourish, and that the men of our church and the women of our church would be in places where they can grow and grow in community and grow in knowledge and love for you. So we thank you, Lord, that you are involved in all these things and that you're leading and guiding us, and just pray that you continue to do so. In your name, amen.
Thanks for joining us.